Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome somebody who doesn't really need introduction. It's a pleasure to have Shigeru Ban back at SCI-Arc. Technically, he graduated from Cooper Union, but he spent 2.5 years at SCI-Arc. So we like to claim Shigeru as part of SCI-Arc. Everybody in this room, I'm pretty sure, is very familiar with his work. His visionary work, his innovative work as an architect, as I'm exploring possibilities of material, as a humanitarian, and all the work that he does in areas of emergency and many other things. So the work of Shigeru is a multidimensional one. It's not one of those architects that you can classify in a particular niche. He works and operates and think in a very vast territory. But I will say that more than anything else, he's a profound, what I would call a humanist as an idea of an architect, which I would argue the majority of architects are in that context. But I think Shigeru Ban take that to a remarkable level of altitude. So it will take all night to enumerate all his accomplishments. There are many, many, and they're all well-deserved. But as I said, the most important thing, I think, is one of those architects his curiosity have no limit. It keep evolving, it keep changing, it keep maturing, but at the same time keep very young and very childlike in the sense to keep new possibilities. So it's an extraordinary honor and pleasure to have Shigeru Ban back at SCI-Arc. Shigeru, welcome back.
Good evening. It's so nice to be back to SCI-Arc. I was here from 1977 to 1979 before I moved to Cooper Union. I was in Santa Monica original space. It was really exciting. Anyway, I'm so happy to finally realize the lecture in person. I already got really tired giving lecture online, so I'm very excited tonight. Tonight, I'm showing you my work, and also I'm showing you the project in working in the disaster areas. After I practiced 10 years, I recognize we as architects are not working for society. We are mainly working for privileged people who has money and power. Because power and money is invisible, they hire us to make monument, to show off their power and money by monumental building, and we are always helping them. I'm not saying I don't want to design the monumental building, but I thought we should do something more, not only privileged people, but also the general public, even people who lost their houses by natural disasters. And also, I must say, the earthquake never kill people, but collapse of building could kill people. That's our responsibility as architect. After cities are destroyed by natural disaster, well, now even the war, the city has to rebuild. So we are looking for new project after the disaster. However, so many people are suffering poor living condition in temporary shelters, temporary housing, before city are rebuilt. So I thought this is our responsibility, also improving the living condition of the victims before city are rebuilt. So that is why I start working in disaster area. Can I start my slide, please? After I graduated from Cooper Union 1984, I started my own practice immediately after without any experience. So I start designing exhibition. This is the first exhibition I designed for my favorite architect, Alvar Aalto from Finland. Since I've been to Finland many times, I want to design the exhibition like Alvar Aalto's architecture. However, the budget was very limited, and I couldn't afford using wood. And also, I didn't want to use such a precious material like wood for temporary use. And I looked for some material to replace wood. Then I found the paper tube made of recycled paper. That time in 80s, the fax paper was rolled. So that when we finished the fax paper, there's a tube inside, paper tube. I kept them because I hate throwing things away. And when I was looking for the material to replace wood, I thought this is a good material, and I found out we can make any length, any diameter. The small diameter of tube was used for the ceiling, like a Beepley's library designed by Alvar Aalto in wood, and larger diameter tube was used as a freestanding partitions. Then I found out, next please, the material is much stronger than I expected. I start testing the characteristic of the paper tube in order to use this material for the structure of the building. Then next please. 1990, I got the opportunity to design temporary exhibition hall. This structure is made of steel mainly because it was too difficult to get the government permission to use such an unusual material for main structure. However, the paper tube was used for the wall, inside, outside. There is 330 tubes. The diameter is 55 centimeter. Oh, sorry. It's like less than 2 feet. And the wall thickness is only 15 millimeter, 1/3 of an inch. And also, of course, inside is empty. They are used for the inside, and the length is 8 meter. It's about 27 feet. And there's few tubes, bigger tubes here. Diameter is 4 feet. Inside is a toilet. In case you finish with toilet paper in emergency situation, you can tear off inside the wall. Next, please. Next, please. Then I had to design my own weekend house because nobody asked me to design the house out of paper. So in order to get this government permission, I spent a year testing, and finally I got the permission for government this is the first permanent building out of paper tube structure. And it's still there. This was built in 1995, and still there and still empty because I have no weekend. Always I'm working, traveling, so still house is empty. Next, please. Then I also designed that kind of arch structure. Again, I had to test to get new permission for the joint with wood and paper tube. This structure was built in 1998, still there. Next, please. In year 2000, actually I started developing paper tube structure in 1985 when people are not talking about environmental issue. Little by little, that the environmental issue became the main thing of any field. So this was the Expo in Germany, a city of Hanover. The main theme of Expo was the environmental issue. Because I was only architect using recyclable material for building, I was chosen by government to make a Japanese pavilion for this Expo. I work with local paper tube company in Germany to produce paper tube. And also as a part of the contract, they had to collect the used paper tube. Expo is only for half a year. So after building demolished, they have to collect the paper to recycle as a part of the contract. And also, I didn't want to use a concrete foundation because concrete is rather difficult material to recycle. I made a wooden box filled with sand in order to support the building. And all the connection is made of just fabric tape. Membrane, normally we use a PVC membrane, but PVC is not friendly, it's not environmental friendly. So I made the membrane out of paper. Because paper is industrial material, we can waterproof or fire protected. So this is a membrane fire protected and waterproofed in paper. The paper tube was laid flat, and this yellow scaffolding, you can rotate by hand little by little to push up. And I was very lucky to collaborate genius architect of Germany, Frei Otto, in order to develop this grid shell structure in paper. Next, please. So as you see, the connection is just fabric tape. It's very simple and very easy to demolish and very inexpensive. Next, please. This is a museum called the Nomadic Museum. This is for a Canadian artist, Gregory Colbert. He asked me to design his own museum, which travels from city to city, country to country. In order to transport the building, I decided to use 20 feet used container. Not because container can be transported, because container is international standard, you can find used container anywhere in the world. So that here in New York, on the pier, we just rent the shipping container from New Jersey for 3 months during the construction, during the exhibition. Then after exhibition is over, we just return to the original shipyard. Then we move to Los Angeles without bringing container because we can rent same kind of container here in Los Angeles. In order to minimize number of the container, I made a checkerboard pattern. There is the existing connection between containers, so to connect the container with existing connections. And the roof is supported by paper tube, 10 meter long, 33 feet. And the Gregory's the photo is exhibited in between. Next, please. Then we came to Santa Monica. We just rented small parking lot. In New York, it was 200 meter, but here, because parking lot was too small, we divided two gallery of 100 meter. But also Gregory asked me to design additional theater space. So I put the space in between and additional membrane to create the membrane theater space. So the museum became 50% bigger than New York without adding container. Number of container is same. Then we went to Tokyo. As you see, that color of container is different because that's what I could rent in Tokyo. Next, please. This is a house I designed long time ago. It's called Picture Window House. This is a 22 meter span. So 22 meter is about whatever it is. I already forgotten about feet and inch. By opening the sliding windows that we can create. Next, please. We can make the linear picture window in order to frame beautiful ocean view. Next, please. This house is also the theme was picture window. This was built in Sri Lanka. There was a big earthquake and tsunami in so-called Sumatra earthquake. Surrounding country has a big damage by tsunami, and including the Sri Lanka. One of the fishermen's villages was totally destroyed. I went to there to build the new housing. And one of the sponsor of our project asked me to design his own house after that. So this was a site. This was very hilly. Without cutting the hill, there's many steps in order to take advantage of the different height of the land, little by little. And I was really influenced by Jeffrey Bauer. He's a local architect in Sri Lanka. He passed away, but I went to see most of Jeffrey Bauer architecture. I was fully influenced by Jeffrey Bauer. Next, please. And then finally you arrive to the main living room with big picture window framing ocean view. Next, please. This is a house, the theme was using glass shutter. This is a glass shutter. Normally, this is used for the fire station. I just improved it for the residential use. This location was unfortunately there's nothing to see outside, so I made a series of the courtyard and swimming pool. So when you want to go to swimming pool, just you have to push button, and this shutter goes up immediately, and connecting the inside outside. Even this small family room, when glass shutter open, the space is connected with the inside outside very easily. Next, please. This building also has a big glass shutter. This is the headquarter of the Swatch company in Tokyo, in Japan. This was competition. Ginza is one of the most expensive commercial area in the world. So land is very expensive. That's why all the building is very narrow and very deep. There is the three kind of atriums. I didn't want to depend on air conditioning in a good season, so that all the facade is made of glass shutter, which can be totally open and closed. In order to take just natural ventilation instead of the air conditioning. On the ground floor up to the fourth floor, in front and back, there is a glass shutter totally open to create the public passage inside of the building. According to the given program, there is 7 boutiques Swatch group own, like Omega's, Swatch, Tissot, Jacquet-Doro, Blancpain. They have brand names, and they want to have 7 boutiques. However, the site is very narrow. If we have one shop, boutique, in front of the commercial street, rest of the shop has to be the back, downstairs, upstairs, so that the commercial, situation is very different between the shop in front or the back. So it's not the requirement for the competition, but I wanted to give same commercial approach to all the 7 shops. So what I did is creating this passage with nice green wall and some water feature, so people can come in and they can see there are 7 glass showroom of the boutiques, and they can visit each showroom. Next, please. This showroom is not too big, so but if you want to see more, you just have to push button. And this is made of hydraulic elevator, bringing the own customer to own boutiques. So there is 7 glass showroom works as a hydraulic elevator, bringing the customer to their own shop. So this is the way to realize having direct approach from public street to each boutique directly. Because of this unusual idea, I won this competition. So this is like one boutiques and this hydraulic elevator. This is the 5th floor atrium. When glass shutter is open, this became a semi-outdoor space. There is the giraffe. This is not joke. When almost building was completed, the president of the Swatch company visited the site, and she asked me, "Where is the giraffe?" Because during the competition, for the competition drawing, I drew the giraffe in the section drawing in order to show the height of the space, and she thought that was part of the design. And she said, unless I see the giraffe, I don't accept as a completion of the building. So I had to spend my own money to ask some sculptor to make a giraffe in wood. This is true story. Next, please. This is also made of shutter, but not glass shutter. This is made of perforated shutter. This is also standard material you can see on the supermarket. This is in Chelsea. When I went to the site in Chelsea area, it was the end of the day. Most of the stores closed with the metal shutter. There are many galleries and boutiques. I thought that the metal shutter is very contextual material on this street. So I decided to use the metal shutter for the facade. Every apartment has a double height living room with so-called bifolding door, which can be totally open to connect inside with the terrace. So this perforated shutter is used for the security and also for the sun shading. So because it's facing to west side, so this really works as a shading device. Next, please. So from inside, when the double bifolding door is closed, bifolding is open, and metal shutter is closed, you can see through the Empire State Building. So because it's quite open, still you can see through. And also during the summer in New York, there's many mosquitoes. So this also works as a kind of mosquito net. So it's very functional. Next, please. This was my temporary office in Paris, on top of Pompidou Center in Paris, as you know, very famous building designed by Renzo Piano and Richard Rogers, 1977. And the museum decided to make a satellite museum in city of Metz, which is the east side of France. And I was very lucky to win this international competition, and I decided to make office in Paris. However, renting office in Paris is very expensive. I couldn't afford. So when I met the president of Pompidou Center first time, I asked him if I can borrow the rooftop or terrace. I want to make my own temporary office in order to save rent. And he said, oh, this is an interesting idea. If you can sometimes show inside your office to the VIP guests as a gallery to see what's happening for new Pompidou Center, he said he allowed me to use the terrace. Also, I had to get the permission from Renzo Piano. It's the first time I went to his office to get the permission to use the terrace on his building. So I immediately brought my Japanese student to work with French student during summer for 2 months. We built my office by ourselves with a paper tube, with wooden joint. And so I spent 6 years on top of the building with a beautiful view of Paris without paying any rent. But there is one disadvantage. When my friend come to see me, because we are the part of the exhibition, so they had to buy ticket to see me. That was very inconvenient. Next, please. This is some of the graphic I submitted for the competition. This is a map of the city. This is a train station. There's only 90 minutes by speed train from Paris. And the main part of the city is the north side of the train station. My side was the south side, which was totally empty. Because I wanted to connect my museum with the center of the city, I put the 3 so-called gallery tube, 50 feet wide and 330 feet long tube. 3 of them are stacking on top of each other, shifted 45 degrees. And both ends of the gallery, there's a big window, picture window. The top tube is heading to the very famous Cathedral in order to frame as a picture window to connect with the city. Second tube is facing to the train station because the Metz is very close to the German border. Every time there is a war, they are occupied by German. There's many historical German architecture all over the city, including this train station, and this become part of important history of the city. So second tube is framing the train station. And then on top of the galleries, I put the timber roof. Idea came from traditional Asian bamboo hut. When I studied the geometry of this woven pattern, I found out the pattern is like this, actually this one. So in order to decide the geometry to divide the roof surface, we can divide with square easily, but because square doesn't have an in-plane stiffness, we need a cross bracing. So that in the end, although square is easy, but the always connection become very complicated with bracing. If we divide with triangle, because triangle is very stiff, rigid, we don't need any bracing. But every corner, you can see the 3 elements is meeting. So it's very busy in the connection. This pattern from the original traditional pattern, it's hexagon and the small triangles. Hexagon is not stable, we need the bracing. But because of a small triangle everywhere, we don't need the bracing. Also, as you see, every corner, only 2 elements is meeting. That is why the the connection is very easy and simple. This is why many of the bamboo basket, the woven bamboo pattern, use this pattern because connection is very simple. So this is a model. This is a kind of tensile structure. Instead of aligning the wood align, then we need a connection, like steel connections. But I don't want to use any steel connection because once we start using steel connection, this is just replacement of the timber from steel. So it's not really interesting as a timber construction. I want to design something which can be done only by the timber, to take advantage of timber. So instead of meeting aligned, I just overlapped in order to avoid the complicated connection. And the upper cord and the lower cord are connected with wooden pieces like a Filendale truss. So this is why, without any connection, steel connections, I could make easily three-dimensional roof, depending on the condition underneath of the galleries and space and so on. Next, please. The ground floor, the facade is made of glass shutter. This is before the opening hour, people waiting outside, but after that, it's totally open. This is a picture window. Next, please. In the center, there's a steel core for the elevator and stair, hanging all the timber. And this is when the glass shutter is open. The terrace and cafe outside is totally connected to inside. This is a picture window framing the cathedral. Next, please. While I was designing Pompidou Center in Metz, I was asked to design golf clubhouse in South Korea. The client was also interested in using timber. I use the same geometry, but this building is compression structure, not tensile structure, so that I don't, even this, all the element is aligned, I can use traditional the joint to connect them without any steel connections. Next, please. And unfortunately, this kind of the technique, making the three-dimensional cutting machine, is only exists in Germany and Switzerland. So that this timber element was produced in Switzerland and sent over to Korea to assemble there. Next, please. This is an office building in Zurich, Switzerland. Again, I wanted to use in timber, and I took the so-called oversizing. In order to have the fire protection for 1 hour, we just have to oversize the timber as a fire protection. That's why we can expose the timber interior. For the connections, again, I didn't want to use steel. So what I did is having 2 layers of the beam attached to the column, and the perpendicular beam profile is over. Over beam is inserted. Because it's over, it doesn't rotate, so I can make very good rigid connection without any steel connections. Next, please. The exterior is covered by the standard aluminum facade, and some of them are glass shutter, which can be totally opened during the night season to create in-between space. And the timber is totally exposed interior. Next, please. This is a small museum in Aspen, Colorado. The site is in downtown Aspen. In downtown Aspen, there's many brick rectangular cubicle building, and I wanted to make my museum fit into the context of the street fabric of Aspen downtown, instead of using heavy brick. So this is the material called Prodima. It's from Spain. This is the very thin veneer with the laminated paper glued with resin. It's a fire protected and also exterior use, and it's woven. And depending on what is the inside, the density of the woven is different. Normally, the museum, first you get into the big lobby or foyer, then you go to gallery. But the given program for this small site was too big, so there was no lobby space available on the ground floor. So what I did is having this semi-outdoor stair, or the people has to take this stair or this glass elevator to go up to the rooftop first before they go into the gallery. Then they enjoy the beautiful mountain view. Then they come down little by little to enjoy the art. The reason why I did this, the way of approaching the gallery, is because of the Aspen. Aspen is known the most famous ski resort. When you do skiing, you take a lift or you walk to the top of the mountain, then you enjoy the mountain view and come down little by little. So this is the same way of enjoying this museum. You go to the upper rooftop to enjoy the mountain view and come down. The roof is made of timber, three-dimensional truss, so-called space frame. Normally, there is a steel connections, but again, I didn't want to use the steel. So what I did is making this diagonal piece curved like this, so that we can just need some bolt to connect the lower and the upper chord with the diagonal pieces without any steel connection. Next, please. This is the Oita Prefecture Museum in south of Japan. This city is very famous for the bamboo craft. So that I decided to make the structure of a third gallery, third floor gallery in timber as much as possible. Because of the size, because of very strict fire regulation in Japan, we cannot make building out of timber. But I wanted to use the timber as much as possible. For the facade, this is a bifolding door, which I made a smaller one in New York for the condominium. Normally, museum is called like a black box or a white cube. Inside is totally hidden. We don't know what is inside. But I wanted to open the museum to the public and street, so that by opening the bifolding door in good season, we don't need to do the air conditioning, and also some event on the street can be connected with the event inside of the museum. So I wanted to open the museum as much as possible to the street. Next, please. This is by folding the door when it's open. Ground floor is a big gallery with movable partitions, because this ceiling is hung with this rod. There are no columns, so that we can make any kind of gallery with movable partitions. Going up to the third floor, there's another foyer with the timber lattice, like the basket, to have natural light into the gallery, into the lobby. Next, please. This is the so-called La Seine Musical. This is a music hall complex, auditorium complex in Paris, on the small island on Seine River. The client asked for the competition. They want to have some kind of monument. This is a kind of the west gate into the Paris. But I didn't want to make an unusual shape to make some monument. So what I did is making this egg shape in glass with sail. It's not receiving the wind. This is receiving the sun and rotating, following the sun to generate the energy. So when, depending on the time of the day you visit the museum, the shape of the building is different. This egg shape, this is also made in timber. Next, please. The outside interior of the theater, this is the mosaic tile I made, especially near Venice, Vicenza. This tile changes the color depending the sun from red to green. Inside, there is the concert hall, so 1,200 seats. There is another concert hall under the landscape for 4,000 seats for the multi-purpose. This is for the classical music. The seating is also made of paper tube, different diameter of the tubes. And also the seat is also made of paper tube with a cushion around. Next, please. This is the Fuji Mountain Museum. When Fuji Mountain was selected for the UNESCO heritage, local prefecture decided to make a museum. Of course, it's competition, and I expected other competitors may propose a beautiful roof like a Fuji Mountain, but I did the other way around. I just used the groundwater from Fuji Mountain for the cooling and heating, and after the groundwater was used for the air conditioning, it's released to a very shallow pond in front to reflect to the building to show the kind of the Fuji Mountain shape. This cladding is made of the special machine to cut the three-dimensionally with local mountain trees. Inside of this shape, there's ramps. Next, please. So there's ramps. It's like you feel like a climbing mountain, and you can see the very beautiful the video of the video taken from different height of the Fuji Mountain. So you are almost experiencing climbing mountain. Then finally, next please. Then you go to the top of the building in some pavilion with big picture window framing Fuji Mountain. Next, please. This is a headquarter for Swatch and Omega in Switzerland. This was just completed 2 years ago. This must be one of the biggest timber structure ever made in contemporary period. Because the site was L-shaped, so building became L-shaped. This is headquarters for Swatch, and there's another building for Omega, and the south building behind. But because of the characteristic of Swatch, I made the building more kind of playful, and because of the characteristic of Swatch design. And for Omega, it's more rigid design in timber. The roof is extended to cover the conference hall of Omega Swatch building over the public street. There is the solar panels and also ETFE membrane, the pillow air bubble membrane, and some window, depending on the very strict environmental restriction in Switzerland. The material, finished material of the roof was carefully chosen. Next, please. This is the public street. The building is covering the conference hall above, and this is a glass shutter which totally open. Next, please. So this is a construction photo. As I said, in Germany and Switzerland, I have some factory I always work with. Only these two countries have such engineering to make the three-dimensional cutting wood. So precisely, each pieces, you can just need a hammer to assemble this structure very quickly and quietly. The floors are made in concrete because it was more economical than making in timber. And 4-story office inside. Next, please. And the other side, only the ground floor pilotis is made in concrete. Rest of the 4th floor is totally timber. The column and beam and the floor is CLT. And where you see darker color, they are hardwood. Otherwise, this is spruce. It's softwood. And in order to reinforce for certain area with more compression, we use the hardwood. And this is the conference hall here. Next, please. And this is the most recent project in south of Taiwan, in Tainan. This is the art museum. This is a flower, the symbol of this Tainan city in the Phoenix. So, and it's an octagon, pentagon shape. So I made a roof in octagon. This is a roof with fractal roof. And the site was rather small in the middle of the city. I stacked the galleries on top of each other, and the roof of each gallery was used as the exhibition space and the garden. So that people can enjoy the art, and they can come out outside and come back to inside, back and forth. So I wanted have a sequence of the visiting gallery with the landscape and the exterior terraces. Next, please. So this is the idea of the fractal roof. I work with the Professor Sakai in Kyoto University. He invented this. Fractal is the three-dimensional triangle. Each one has made of same triangle everywhere. The effect is this diagram is showing the effect. So if the building is exposed to sun, so we need a lot of insulation. If we make just a simple roof, because of radiation, even this create a shadow, still radiation heat the building below. This fractal roof is just like underneath of the trees. Underneath of tree is very cool because of the fractal effect. Leaves create some kind of the streams and wind, so that always that there is some the ventilations under this fractal roof. That is why it's much better than just having a roof because of this fractal effect. So I made a huge fractal roof to cover the gallery and the glass roof. Next, please. So this is a fractal roof covering the glass roof and also covering some of the galleries on south side and the west side. Next, please. And this is center core supporting the glass roof. And this, as you see, this is the kind of shadow created by the fractal roof. Next, please. Now, going to the disaster relief project. 1994, East Africa country called Rwanda, they had a kind of the genocide between two tribes, Hutu and Tutsi. Over 2 million people became refugees in surrounding countries. And I saw these two photos on magazine, and I was quite surprised. Refugees are freezing with blanket. I thought most of African countries is very warm. I found out from an article, during the rainy season, it's very cold, and they cannot keep, they need to keep them warm with blanket. And the shelter given by United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees was like this. I thought unless we improve the shelter, otherwise any medical care doesn't help them. So I wrote a letter to United Nations High Commissioner United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Geneva. Of course, there's no reply. So I went to the Geneva without any appointment, and I was very lucky to meet a German architect who was responsible for the refugee shelter. And I proposed my idea using paper tube for shelter construction. And I was very lucky to be hired as a consultant to develop this project further because of following reason. This is a typical shelter made by the United Nations. They give them only plastic sheet. And the refugee has to cut the trees by themselves to make a frame. And because over 2 million people became refugees, they cut trees, and this used to be forest, but this became very serious deforestation, and they go much further to cut more trees. So that the UN start providing them aluminum pipes. But aluminum is very expensive material locally, so they throw them out for money, and they cut trees again. That's why providing aluminum pipe was not good solution. So that was the timing. I proposed my idea to use paper tube for the construction. Next, please. This is the prototype. I created a few prototypes for testing, And I was very lucky to get some support from a company called Vitra. You may know that Vitra is a Swiss company. They have a building made by famous building. This is a museum and a factory designed by Frank Gehry. Behind this, there is a meeting space designed by Tadao Ando. Also, they have a factory designed by Alvar Aalto, and also they have their own fire station designed by Zaha Hadid. That was the first project she designed. So this company has the most expensive collection for architecture, and my tent became their cheapest collection. This is a Bienba camp. The refugee came back to home and accepting the refugee from Congo. And I went to there to put up my tent. I wanted to make something more comfortable, but unfortunately, because of UN regulation, the strategy, we are not supposed to make something too comfortable because otherwise they're going to stay there too long. So my mission was to just replace wood by paper tube, and the budget was only $50 per unit. Paper tube with the standard tarpaulin sheet. Next, please. Year after 1995, in Kobe city in Japan, we had a big earthquake and city burned after the fire. And I read the article on the newspaper. There's the church totally destroyed by earthquake, but there are many Vietnamese refugees gathering because they are mostly Catholic. So I thought the refugees, the victim must have a more difficult time than Japanese refugees, Japanese victims. So I went to there, and it was so difficult to find the church because there's no street. It's totally covered by rubbish. And finally, I found the church, and the only statue remained. Rest of the building totally destroyed and fired. And they are having the morning ceremony with the firework. And I proposed to the priest, why don't we rebuild church out of paper? He thought I'm crazy, proposing making building out of paper after the fire. But I didn't give up. Every Sunday, I took the fast train from Tokyo to commute to the Kobe every Sunday to join the morning service. And then, next please, I got to know that the Vietnamese refugees, they are living like this in the park with plastic sheet. Somehow, because of their condition, they didn't want to move to the government-made temporary houses. They wanted to stay in the park, even such an unhealthy situation. In the rainy days, totally wet. In the hot days, inside is incredibly hot. And also, Japanese neighbor tried to kick them out because they are afraid the park is becoming like a slum. So I thought we have to provide them some comfortable, healthy house, but something that looks very temporary, with very nicely planned to be accepted by neighbor. So I started making the temporary house with my student, with paper tube and plastic beer crates. In Japan, there is two major beer company called Kirin and Asahi. They were competing that time. Particularly ask Kirin because the other Asahi made plastic beer crate red, which doesn't go with the color of the paper tube. I still remember the day we received the beer crate. I thought the Kirin company is very nice, donating beer with crate, but it was totally empty, so I was very disappointed. Instead, we put the sandbag. We calculated to stand for the typhoon. We had to be very heavy weight, so that we put the sandbag inside instead. And there is 2 layers of membrane. During summer, we just open the gable to have some natural ventilation in the ceiling. People stay there for 4 years. Next, please. Then the priest finally accepted to rebuild the church out of paper. And I got the small land, 10 meter by 15 meter. And I made the kind of the oval shape, which come from my favorite church in Rome, designed by Bernini. As you see, the student built everything by themselves with a paper tube. And this is the first time they're having morning service under the roof. And the priest thought that they just used for a few years, But this church and become a kind of community center for this disaster area, having the concert, wedding, and so many events, and it's become very important symbol of the city. So they use for 10 years. Then there was a big earthquake in Taiwan. We decided to donate this church. We disassemble them to send over to Taiwan. Next, please. And disassemble. This is in Puri, village called Puri, in the middle of the Taiwan. This became permanent church and community center in Taiwan. It still exists. Then I thought, what is the definition of temporary structure, and what is the definition of the permanent structure? As you see, the many buildings in the big cities, always a developer buys a building and destroy it, even concrete, and put a new one. So if building, even made in concrete, if building was made to make money, it's a temporary. But even building made in paper, if people love it, it can be permanent. So that is my definition, what is temporary and permanent. Next, please. In 1999 in Turkey, they had a big earthquake, and I was asked to come to make temporary houses. Every material, paper tube, plastic beer crate was donated free, totally free of charge from local manufacturer. These children help us to put waste paper inside of the tube to make it more insulated, because this site was very cold. And everything was also made by the volunteer student. Next, please. Year 2001, west side of India, they had a big earthquake. And I went to there to build temporary houses. There was some fabric company. They are making their own paper tube to put fabric around for shipping. So it was very easy and inexpensive to get the paper tube locally made. And there's a woven the sheet available locally with a very thin plastic sheet in between. Only thing I couldn't get locally was plastic beer crates, because nobody drink beer locally. So my local architect, Indian architect, recommended me to use Coca-Cola crates, but I thought red Coca-Cola crate is not very contextual. So I decided to make a traditional mud floor and mud foundation. Some of them I use as a house, some of them I use as a school. And I got the photo from local architect last year. This still exists, used as the local clinic. So people take care very well and still using this structure. Next, please. In Sri Lanka, this fisherman's village was totally destroyed by tsunami. I went with my student with some local available mud cement brick. And I proposed to have a kind of semi-outdoor indoor space because of climate. People are eating and also the walking under the shading, so that I made a kind of semi-outdoor indoor space to connect with the inside. And as soon as they move in, also I made the closet as a wall, so that we also created storage. They decorated very nicely. So the village became like this, the same shot after we built the 50 units of the houses. Next, please. 2008, city of Chengdu in China, when the Olympic was brought in Beijing, there was a huge earthquake in Chengdu. Over 30,000 people are killed, and many of the schools are destroyed, and many children died. And I went to there immediately to start making some temporary houses, but local authorities didn't want any foreigner to make temporary houses. Instead, I met the schoolmaster. She asked me to design the temporary school classroom. So I brought my student from Japan to work with a Chinese student for 5 weeks. We built 9 classrooms over 5,000 square feet. Just with student and locally available paper chip wooden joint. Next, please. And the children could come back to the home. They looks very happy. This structure still also exists in Chengdu. Next, please. 2009, Italy, city of L'Aquila, near Rome. and the old town was totally destroyed by earthquake, just like this. And do you remember him? This is a former Prime Minister of Italy, Mr. Berlusconi. And he wanted to bring a G8 summit. G8, that time Russia was part of the summit. He wanted to bring the Prime Minister and the President to his resort island. But the earthquake happened, he went to the site, and he always say something wrong. So in front of journalists, he said, "Oh, the victims are enjoying like a camping in front with the fire," and so he was totally criticized, and he decided to bring G8 summit to L'Aquila suddenly. And this is the former Japanese Prime Minister. The embassy was very kind to organize the press conference instead of journalists showing my model, and I'm sure Mr. Berlusconi doesn't know what he's holding. He's holding the paper tube. And because of this the conference, I got the €500,000 donated. Next, please. And the mayor wanted to make a concert hall because this city is very famous for music, but all the concert halls were destroyed. So I made the wall out of sandbag. I didn't want to use a concrete wall, but it has to be very, very insulated. It's a very scaffolding kind of steel pipe with a heavy sandbag to make an acoustically insulated wall, just covered by curtain. And inside was a paper tube. I work with acoustical engineer to have very good sound effect with a different diameter of the tubes. Next, please. Now that also exists still. 2010 in Haiti. This is island. The left half is Haiti. Right half is the Dominican Republic. Because the capital of the Haiti, Port-au-Prince, all the airport closed, so I had to fly to Santo Domingo, drove over 7 hours and finding out situation like this. So I couldn't get any the material in Haiti, so I made a team in one of the universities in Santo Domingo, preparing the shelter with a paper tube in plastic sheet, and we brought back to train the local people to build by themselves. Next, please. Year after, 2011, in northern Japan, we have earthquake, tsunami, and also nuclear problem, as you may remember. This is a typical shelter. People move into the big roof like a gymnasium, and they stay like this without any privacy. They have to stay there at least 4 months until the prefab government temporary houses are built. So it's impossible, but government doesn't care the condition. But I thought privacy is most basic human right, especially for the humans. It's impossible to stay like this. Next, please. So I designed the partition system, paper partition system, and this is very easy. It's a tube with hole. A small tube is just inserted, and this becomes very good rigid connection. And we just hang the curtain with a safety pin. So this is the same gymnasium which was totally open. Depending on the size of the family of 2, family of 6, we can extend with a small tube any size to meet the size of the family. When I started doing this, authority didn't allow us to do it because they said there's no example before. But I didn't give up. So finally, little by little, it was accepted. I went to 80 facilities, and we built 2,000 units in 3 months. Next, please. This is a condition 2 years ago in Kumamoto, south of Japan, after the big flooding. Now we have not only earthquake, we have big typhoon, flooding every year. So I'm very busy during the typhoon season. We have to make the partition. Finally, after 15 years working in all over Japan, the government accepted this as a standard facility for for the victim. But because of the COVID situations, also I made a fabric with the special treatment, and also the isolated each family with some corridor, because the partition also helped to stop the spreading COVID viruses. Next, please. Then, unfortunately, after they stay there 4 months, they move into such a poor temporary houses made by government. Because it's so close to each other, they cannot open the window, leaking, there's no insulation for temperature and also the noise, and so there's no storage, it's so messy inside. Also, some of the city, they didn't have enough empty site to make a single-story standard temporary house. So I proposed to make 3-story houses with shipping container. And next, please. And this is the town called Onagawa City. They accepted to build this in the baseball ground. Baseball ground was the only empty space they had, and this was not big enough to make 190 units they needed. So they accepted to make 3-story houses. As you see, this is like a checkerboard pattern. Inside the container is rather small, so we put a small 1-bedroom and a bath unit. And in between space is rather big, wide, so that we made public space, living and dining space. Because I had to use the government fund, so I have to make strictly the size of the house and also the budget. Even this space we created, it looks much better than the government house, but it was made with the same budget and same size. But still, we can make something better. And we also made all the storage with students. But unfortunately, I created a new problem. Government allowed people to stay temporary house for 4 years, but this was so comfortable, people who stayed there for 8 years. They didn't want to move out. Next, please. We spent, this was built only 3 months for 190 units. 2018 in Philippines, there was a big typhoon and the flood. I went to there with students to build temporary houses with locally available paper tube and the locally available woven bamboo fence. In Philippines, they have big beer company called the San Miguel. I asked them to donate a beer crate, but they were so cheap they didn't help us. So finally, I had to use a Coca-Cola case. Next, please. Next, please. 2016, in Nepal, they had a big earthquake, and all the building in Nepal is made of brick. So in order to propose the temporary houses, or actually permanent house, I wanted to reuse the rubble of the bricks instead of throwing away. I made a kind of the structural system with a wooden frame filled with the bricks. And I tested in Japan to meet the Japanese earthquake standard structurally. So that it's easy to make a wooden frame and just fill with the brick. And we made the temporary houses. And also in the higher altitude, we also use the stone. This is the elementary school. Next, please. This is the last project. This is a project in Christchurch, New Zealand. 2 weeks before the earthquake in Japan, 2011, there was a big earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand. This is the most important cathedral in Christchurch, a symbol of the city, was destroyed. Even now, it's like this. It's not repaired, it's not rebuilt. And I got the email from one of the priests. He saw some article in the magazine. There is a Japanese architect designed temporary house free of charge. He said he wanted me to design the temporary church free of charge. I told him, if church is used not only for religious service but community use, I'm happy to design. So I went to there. Although I was very busy commuting the disaster area in northern Japan, I also commuted once a month to New Zealand. And first thing I did is analyzing geometry of existing old church. Of course, I found many geometrical rules and the golden sections. I use the same rule for the new design of the temporary church. Next, please. So this is the paper cathedral. The ground floor is made of a shipping container as office, just covered by curtain, and locally available paper tube. And here is the priest. This was very well received. Now this become kind of the tourist destination, and it is no longer temporary. And she was very happy for the space, but when I proposed to make a cross out of paper tube, she was not very happy because she thought making cross out of paper looks very cheap. But I told her by accident in Japanese, the paper we call kami, which also means God by chance. So I told her making the cross out of paper must be very lucky, and she accepted finally. Now she really loves the cross made of paper tube. So this still exists as a symbol of the city. Next, please. This is the last slide. What I'm doing 2 weeks ago in Poland. As you know, because of the war, there's over 4 million people became refugees, escaping to the surrounding countries. And I saw the photo. The refugees has to stay in the big gymnasium without any privacy. So I called my friend in Poland, architects, and I proposed to do the paper partition system. And immediately there was a city called Helm. It's only about 12 miles away from border of the Ukraine. It's a first stop of the train. People have to get out and stay at the big gymnasium, and no privacy. So we started making, this is actually not gymnasium, this is an empty supermarket. All the paper tube and also full of color because the fabric was donated from many different fabric company. And we made 1,200 units in this supermarket, and 390 units was installed in this supermarket, and rest of the 882 unit was sent to the Ukraine because also there's the internal displaced refugees inside of Ukraine in the west side of the country. So we sent to the friend of the Ukrainian architect to build. And also, this is my organization called Voluntary Architect Network, sounds like my name. So this is in Paris, actually. Also, there's many refugees in Paris, in Germany, and surrounding country. We built also this is in Paris. We built in Paris and also Slovakia. Now, new projects starting in Hungary and Romania. And this is in Ukraine, the city of Lubin. This was gymnasium. So we couldn't go in, unfortunately, but the local architects built them for them. So now this project is moving on. Unfortunately, I don't know until when. I hope it to stop very soon. But the more and more refugees coming out from country. So this is what I'm doing right now. I went to Poland twice. So there is a great team of the students there working with us in every country. So this is what I'm busy now. That's all. Thank you very much.